Do you have a pet gnat? Yeah, I didn't think so. Me, I got two of them. And I'm going to be opening one of them up on today's show. Also, what exactly is the average wine enthusiast drinking these days? Also, don't be afraid to be trying new wines. I'm going to be talking about a wine that I wasn't very familiar with, but I really enjoyed, and you may enjoy it too. We're going to be talking about all that and so much more on this episode of The Average Wine Enthusiast. Hi there, everybody. My name's Mike LaPlante, and I'm the Average Wine Enthusiast. Now, what exactly is a wine enthusiast? I feel it's someone who obviously likes wine, but more importantly, is open to all different kinds of wines and wants to try all different kinds of wines. Any wine drinker on their wine journey will come across a wine that really strikes their fancy, and they'll stick to it. Folks who are maybe not wine enthusiasts will find a bottle of wine they like and stick to that one bottle for a long period of time. And that is definitely not an enthusiast, obviously. But an enthusiast can come across a style, a region of wine where it comes from, and wants to try different wines from that area or from even possibly one particular winery that makes all different kinds of wines. Sticking to one wine does not make you an enthusiast, that's for sure, just because you like it. But in general, an enthusiast is someone who obviously is willing to go out and try all different kinds of wine. And that brings us around to this episode where I'm going to be trying something new that I've never tried before, heard about it for the last couple of years. It's a type of wine that is not necessarily readily available. And the type of wine I'm talking about is Pet-Nat. And that is short for Petillant Naturél, which if you were to translate that, I believe it's the natural way to make something effervescent, bubbly. So it is a type of bubbly for sure. And of course, all different kinds of bubbly have different kinds of characteristics: tight bubbles, big bubbles, sweet, dry. The list goes on and on. I just had some Prosecco this past New Year's Eve. It was delicious. And those tend to be bigger bubbles. So I recently bought some wine from the Trainer Vineyard. They were offering a 3-pack. I don't know how I saw their ad. It was probably on social media somewhere. It's funny when you're a wine lover and you go on social media and you look at other wine-related items out there, you tend to have many wine-related ads come across your feed. So their ad came across. I got a 3-pack from them. I don't even remember what they were, but they were blends of some sort, red wine. So they also sent me an offer to buy some of their Pet-Nat. And like I said, it's a type of wine that is made a very specific way. Obviously, we know Champagne, and I believe Prosecco was made the same way. It's basically the Champagne, and there's a method for that. The Champagne's called Méthode Champenoise. This is how they get the bubbles in this type of wine, is they ferment it, and typically the alcohol isn't that high, and when they're done, I think it's like around 9%, and what they do is they add more sugar and yeast to the bottles of wine. That's the case with Champagne. Other types of bubbly will do it in vats. But as far as wine that comes right out of Champagne, that's the way they do it there. So the yeast and sugar goes in, and then of course you're going to have basically a second fermentation happening. And that fermentation, of course, causes gases to want to be released again. And that's when they cork it up, I guess you'd say. With the case of champagne, they cork it up. With the case of other types of bubbly that are done in vats, that's when they would bottle it and put the cork in it as well. So you have a bubbly wine. Pet-Nat, Petillant Naturél, does the method ancestral. That's probably said with a French something on it as well, but basically the way they do it is it's sort of like a volatile situation, because this wine is only fermented once. So what you get is you're letting it ferment in the bottle. So I would assume that you would want to drink it within the first 24 months. And since it's so volatile, it's a bit of a trick to make this for winemakers, because you can have too much pressure, you can have too much alcohol, not enough alcohol, not dry enough, too sweet, whatever. So that's the deal with Pet-Nat. What I'm finding with the research that I did, a lot of places that make Pet-Nat also are usually very biodynamic, and they use sustainable practices at their vineyard and their winemaking processes as well, so that it's a sustainable project, so that you're not taking anything away from the earth or putting chemicals in the ground, and they're vegan friendly and all that kind of stuff. So there's more to Pet-Nat usually than just the way it gets its bubbles, but that's where it gets its name from. The way it gets its bubbles is because this was fermented in the bottle, not wholly either. They start the fermentation, and when it's still fermenting, that is when they bottle it. Now, what are the drawbacks to that? Usually is you'll end up with as you can tell right now, is a very foggy bottle of wine, because they don't fine it or filter it. Some places do filter their Pet-Nat, but Trainer obviously does not. This is, by the way, is their Rosé Pet-Nat, which I believe they made with Pinot Noir. This is Pinot Noir Rosé. Not sure why they call it Rosé. That's some other process that they did to make that a Rosé and a Pet-Nat at the same time. So it's not a very clear wine. Having said that, you can make it clear if you want it by making it cold and keeping it still. As you can see, I shot myself opening this bottle of Pet-Nat. That was fun, I'll have to admit. As you can see, the bottle, I had this bottle on the floor of my cellar standing up, and it seemed to clear up pretty good, because when I bought it, or when I received it, I should say, it was cloudy. And but when I went down there, it was relatively clear. So what I could do now that I have it open is I could pour it out and make sure that I don't pour out any of the sediment that is in here. As you can tell from the video of me opening this bottle, that there's lots of stuff in here besides just wine. So what you can do is pour the wine out, maybe even filter it yourself somehow, a strainer of some kind, or just pour it out until you start getting some kind of residue. And then you take that and you let it sit in some cold water, or someplace cold. Bring it outside if you're in a wintry location such as I am right now in the middle of January, and it'll clear up if that's a thing for you. I'm not sure. I don't think I mind drinking something with some floaties in it, especially if it's fizzy at the same time. So this is kind of like a new experience for me, drinking the Pet-Nat, that's for sure. So what else did I want to mention about Pet-Nat? Everybody makes it differently. Like I said, some people filter it, some people don't. It is a very volatile way of making wine, so every winemaker is going to do it the way they feel is the right way, or the safe way, or whatever, the most cost-effective way. So supposedly, the result is a raw and rustic and lively wine. And it's also very reflective of the surrounding terroir. Not sure why that is, but that's a characteristic of Pet-Nat. This is from Trainer is on Prince Edward in Prince Edward County. I was going to say Prince Edward Island. It's almost an island, but it's not. So that's in the northern part of Lake Ontario, and so you're going to get some of that freshwater influence on it, I'm sure, and whatever else they are growing in Prince Edward County, as well as every other element that makes up the terroir of that area. So why don't we give it a pour and check it out? I'm going to be very careful here. It looks like cider, freshly made cider. So it's bubbly, but the bubbles went away pretty quickly. Very interested to taste this. Still a bit of a chill on it. My cellar's around 15 degrees Celsius right now, and it's probably a little chillier on the ground, I would assume. That's why I put it on the ground in my cellar. So let's give it a sniff. It's definitely fruity. It has cranberry. No earthiness to this at all that I'm getting right off the bat. Why don't we give it a taste? So bubbly. It's not. You don't sense that this is a bubbly wine. There's no bubbles in it, even though you can tell from the video of me opening this up, there was a lot of bubbles coming out of this bottle. Made a bit of a mess of the tablecloth. I should have put something under the bottle. And as it was bubbling over the edge of the bottle, I think I remember while doing my research, they say to put something under the bottle just in case it boils over. So Pet-Nat, I'm intrigued. Being a rosé, it does have characteristics of a rosé. So some, like I said, cranberry. A little bit of melon. Some peach. Low acid. The flavor comes right at the front of your palate. Doesn't travel through your palate at all. By the time it's at the back of your palate, it's mostly gone. It doesn't appear to have much alcohol in it. I'm kind of curious what the alcohol is in this bottle. It says it's 13.3. You could get in trouble drinking this stuff here because there is no hint of alcohol. Very yummy. No acid, no hint of tannins. Is this wine? Is all I can ask. Yes, of course it's wine. It's sold in a wine bottle, but not a really typical wine bottle because they have to make bottles that have caps on them. This kind of cap, which is interesting. Could they not put a screw top on that? Probably not. It may get compromised, or it'd be messier than it was when I took this cap off. I'm not sure, but a fun little wine right here. Pet-Nat. I also bought a red Pet-Nat. I'm not exactly sure what this was made with. It's 11.6% alcohol, which is kind of interesting. It's made with Vidal Pinot Noir and Gamay Noir. Very interesting. 11.6 and 13.3 with the rosé. Oh, and I'm mistaken. This rosé was made with a Gamay Noir, strictly Gamay Noir. And it's the first 2020 that I've drank, so yeah, you got to drink this. You don't got to drink it right away, but I suspect in a year from now, it ain't going to be the same. This is an experience that it probably isn't going to be around if you leave it sit for more than 12 months, I'm guessing. Don't know. I haven't drank enough Pet-Nat in my life. In fact, you're witnessing me drinking my first Pet-Nat right now, and it's tons of fun. So this brings us to the part of the episode where I like to talk about a wine that you can get usually on a regularly easy basis, shows up at least once a year in your local wine store. At least it shows up regularly in my LCBO, and it is a wine that I have a few of these, and I tend to pull one out every once in a while, and this is something that you can get yourself, and if you see it ever go on sale, buy a bunch of them. It is Chateau d'Assenac, and it's Malbec out of Cahors. Now, if you watched the Malbec show that I recorded on national, or I think it's international, Malbec Day, which, let's do that again. You know that Malbec is actually a grape that was transported to Argentina, and they called it Malbec. The grape is Cot, C-O-T, and the O is accented. And it's interesting that Malbec coming out of Cahors is actually called Malbec. 30 years ago, they would not have called this wine Malbec. They would have called it Cot. But obviously the popularity of Malbec and the quality of Malbec coming out of Argentina is really good. And so those folks in Cahors, France, which is on the west side, not too far away from Bordeaux, they realized that maybe we should be calling our wine Malbec, because it is Malbec. It's the same grape. Cot and Malbec are the same. If it's coming out of Argentina, it's called Malbec. If it's coming out of Cahors, apparently it's called Malbec as well. So yeah, this is around 20 bucks. You can get it on sale maybe for 18. Definitely worth the money. It's a big bang for your buck. It's got what would I call it? Typical Malbec characteristics with that a little bit more old world style to it, which you don't get a big fruit bomb in your mouth. You get more earthiness and a more. It too is more reflective of its terroir. So yeah, check it out. Chateau d'Assenac out of Cahors, France, and they call it Malbec. And you should pick up yourself a bottle if you see it. I recently became a member of a winery out in Kelowna, BC, called Summerhill. And I joined them about a month and a half ago, and I recently received a shipment from them. They're going to send me 3 more shipments of 6 bottles. And I really like the shipment that they sent me. It's very diverse. Let's just put it that way in terms of varietals and vintages. I got a Merlot, a Pinot Noir, a wine they call Cabernets, which I assume is a Cabernet Franc and a Cabernet Sauvignon, but it could be a blunt. No, that's probably what it is. And one of the 6 bottles was a Marachel Foch. Now, I know I had tried Foch in the past, was not very, didn't, at that point in my wine journey, it didn't really strike me as a very pleasant wine to drink. I didn't know, maybe my palate wasn't developed enough. I just remember it being green. That was the one thing that I thought it had notes of greenness in it, whether it was a green bell pepper or green grass or whatever. So what I found out about Foch is that it doesn't belong to the same species of grapes that the majority of the wine is in the world. And that is Vitis vinifera. So that's where much of the wine comes from. but Foch is not part of the Vitis vinifera grape species. Foch belongs to the Vitis riparia species of grape, and they grow natively in Canada and the United States. Vitis vinifera grow natively in Spain, Portugal, France, Italy, Greece, Iran. You know, you get the picture, that neck of the woods. And obviously the wine that they made there spread out through the world, and lots of people grow those grapes for making wine everywhere. Not the case with Foch. Foch does very well in cold weather, so it probably has a thick skin, and it's very hospitable to a shorter growing season. So maybe that's why I didn't like, or I shouldn't say I didn't like, but I just wasn't turned on to Foch. I didn't go out and look for more Foch. But this bottle of Foch that I got from Summerhill really impressed me because it had all the characteristics that I look for in a wine that I like. Usually has some fruit forwardness, some earthiness to it. In fact, I found that the Foch that I drank, their Marachel Foch, was relatively balanced in terms of fruit forwardness and earthiness. Also full-bodied, a bunch of tannins, not crazy amount of tannins, but enough, and you felt as though it had the ability to age for some period of time. And the vintage on the Foch was 2016. I want to say they also sent me another 2016. The Cabernets they sent me were 2009. When I say Cabernets, that one bottle of that's called Cabernets was a 2009. I haven't opened that yet, but I look very forward to it. It was a good first impression for the Summerhill winery, that's for sure. I drank the Foch because it was something that intrigued me, and I really didn't know what to expect. So I was really impressed with the Foch out of Summerhill. So if you have the opportunity to get yourself a Foch, I would highly recommend it. It reminded me of a wine that is also that was made with a grape, I should say, of the same species, the Vitis riparia. It's called Frontenac, which is it's a hybrid grape that they put together in Minnesota, I believe, and it's called Frontenac. And it reminds me very much, has some of the same characteristics of this Frontenac. Yeah, Frontenac and Foch are similar in my book, but I'll definitely be looking out for more Foch, and I suggest you do the same. I guess that's going to do it for this episode. I'd like to thank you very much for watching, and I would also like to thank the Big Organ Trio for letting me use their music in the show. If you have any comments, please leave them down below. And if you have any friends who are like you, who are watching YouTube videos about wine, learning a thing or two, please turn them on to the show. I would really appreciate that as well. I guess that's going to do it. Until next time, my name is Michael LaPlante, and I'm the Average Wine Enthusiast. Salud!